Africa's club of the century against Lionel Messi. The Egyptian and Cairo giants Al Ahly are set to kick off their 2025 Club World Cup campaign against Inter Miami tonight in the inaugural fixture of the entire tournament. So let's preview that match and preview what Al Ahly's chances are in the rest of the group stages up next on the African Five-A-Side podcast. Hello and welcome to the African Football Report on the African Five-A-Side podcast. I'm your host, Maher Mezahi, and this podcast is brought to you by africaasacountry.com. Just a reminder, in case you guys didn't hear it in the last episode, we are going to be hosting a Africa as a Country festival in Nairobi, Kenya, coming up in just about 10 days' time, a little less than 10 days now, a little more than a week. And I would love it if anybody that's watching this channel could make it out. It'd be a pleasure to meet some of you in person. And we're going to be officially hard launching our first physical edition of a magazine on June 27th. So I'll have all of the details below in the description with a link where you can just click and you have all the dates and locations for everything that we're doing during the festival in the coming week to 2 weeks or so. But let's talk about tonight's match, Al Ahly versus Inter Miami. And I think I'm going to be a little wide with my analysis in case there are some fans that aren't too familiar with African football and that maybe are just poking their head in here to see what Al Ahly is about prior to this opening fixture. For those that don't know, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Al Ahly are Africa's club of the century. They are they've won the most CAF Champions League titles. They've won around, I think, 45 Egyptian league titles. They've won the most amount of Egyptian cups. They've won the most amount of African super cups. They have the biggest budget on the African continent, and everyone universally and unanimously acknowledges them to be the sort of standard on the African continent. That's why the parallel with Real Madrid is such a fitting parallel. We call them the Real Madrid of Africa, and I think it's one that really, it's a parallel that really stands true. So one of the reasons why we like to call them the Real Madrid of Africa, and one of the things that I've sort of struggled with, I was trying to find out what makes them so great, right? There's a few different reasons why. We can get into that, and it would take a much longer period of time to really go into in depth of it. But really, what drives Al Ahly as a club, what's in the DNA, the defining characteristic, if I may, is a relentless want to win trophies at all levels, in all competitions at all times. And that comes from the supporters, to the players, to the coaches, to the board members, to everybody. There is and I would even say an unhealthy obsession with winning everything all the time. And as a result, there can be a lot of pressure at many different levels in the club. But that's what makes Al Ahly, in my opinion. I don't see that kind of ambition at other clubs. You know, at other clubs, maybe if you win one Champions League title, you might get a little bit complacent the next year. Definitely, if you win 2 in a row, you're going to be celebrating. You're definitely going to be complacent to try and win 3 in a row. Al Ahly, on 2 occasions, they won 4 out of the last 5 Champions League titles. And on both of those occasions, they were just hoping that they would be the first African club to win 3 in a row. They're just always looking forward. What's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? I remember at one of those Champions League finals against Espresso Tunis, and I've told the story before, just hanging out, having dinner with some Al Ahly fans. And, you know, these days with phones and stuff, sometimes people, they have short attention spans. But some of the supporters, they just had their phones on the table as we're eating dinner, just watching something. And I'm thinking, okay, are they watching another football match? What are they watching? No, they're watching handball. The handball final of the Egyptian Cup, where Al Ahly was playing somebody else. And they didn't even like handball, but they had to watch it because it's Al Ahly that's playing and they want to make sure they win the title. So that's what Al Ahly is, to give you an idea, this unhealthy obsession of winning. So when you have this as a defining characteristic, once you accomplish everything that there is to accomplish at the national level, once you accomplish everything that there is to accomplish at the continental level, what's left? You got to keep going up to the international level. And we've seen this really develop over the last 5 to 10 years with Al Ahly. They sort of set their sights on, can we be the first African club to win the Club World Cup? We've had, of course, 2 African clubs, TP Mazembe and Raja Casablanca, make it to the final of a Club World Cup, but we've never had an African club win it. And Al Ahly failed over the last 4 or 5 years in trying to win, you know, the previous iteration of this tournament that was being played in November and December. but they consistently finished in third place, and that's really in my opinion, that's praiseworthy. Um, they really set Africa on a pretty high level, where all of a sudden we consistently were finishing ahead of North American clubs and ahead of Asian clubs. Only the Europeans and the South Americans were consistently beating us, and that's some of the times because we'd have to go through the European champions to even get to the finals. So Africa had maybe a tougher road than a lot of South American clubs. Um, so yeah, they've had this thing on their mind of, you know, internationally now. Now we need to grow our club and start winning things even past the African continent. Um, and at the Club World Cup, for example, I remember a match against Real Madrid, and I was listening to a radio program that brought it up, and I just remembered. I said, "Oh yeah, that's true." They were just losing 2-1 to Real Madrid going into the 90th minute, and they end up losing the match 4-1. But still, you think, okay, this is this is quite good, right? Um, so have they done enough to give themselves the means to to begin that ascent into international standards, right? If we're, like, where can we situate them, right? I think to do that, first of all, they have to sign even more players, even better players, and then the coaching needs to be top notch as well. And I think that's what they've tried to do prior to this Club World Cup. First of all, they signed Orlando Pirates coach Jose Rivero. Uh, if you've been watching on this channel, you know what we think about Jose Rivero and the work that he's done with Orlando Pirates over the last 2 to 3 years. If you are new to African football, you might think, who's the Spanish coach? In Africa, we love him. He really started off in Finland, I think with a club called Inter. And when he initially came to South Africa, for one of the biggest clubs in Africa, Orlando Pirates, I think a lot of people initially called him a plumber. That was one of the things that even like the journalists would ask him to his face, like, people are calling you a plumber. What do you think about that? And he's just kept it calm, cool, collected. He's somebody that I think never played professional football, but was always sort of fascinated by the coaching aspect of the game. He's somebody that's universally respected by his peers, and it very much is that Spanish school of quick passing of the ball, monopolizing possession of the ball, having ball playing in the center of your DNA. Even if the entire team is pressing you up, like we saw against with MC of Algiers in the CAF Champions League quarterfinals, where everybody was up in their own half of the pitch, Orlando Pirates would still try to pass the ball out. He did, I think the best thing that he did with Orlando Pirates when I was watching them play and what made them so difficult to defend is what we were calling like third man running. So if you have player A, player B, and player C, player A would play the ball into player B. Let's say a striker who's holding the ball up with his back towards goal. And player C would immediately, let's say it's a winger, would immediately be taking off for a run. And sometimes there was like two player C's that would be taking off for a run. So that third ball off the ball running, third man off the ball running. That's sorry. That's what really I think made Orlando Pirates so difficult to defend. And it looked like at times the players were playing with telepathy. They were reading each other's minds, and you could tell he was doing so much work drilling that within them on the training pitch. So overall, I think people fell in love with his style of play on the African continent, and it was only a matter of time, unfortunately, before he leaves Orlando Pirates. And then the question is, where's he going to go? Initially, he said, I want to go closer to Europe. So we thought maybe he's going to go to Europe. And then we thought, no, maybe North Africa, because it's true that South Africa is quite far from Europe. Yes, now we have airplanes and he can go, but you save, like just on a one-way trip or, back and forth, a return trip, you probably save what, like 12 hours, right? Just from that distance of being in North Africa compared to being in South Africa. So eventually he Al Ahly comes calling and he agrees to join the club. And it's one of those where we just had one real question with Jose Rivero. We saw him at Orlando Pirates take on a project of 2-3 years where the club and the fans were very patient with him, and that bore its fruits and bore its results. With Al Ahly, when we talk about that unhealthy obsession of winning, um, could Jose Rivero sometimes put his principles aside and focus on winning this specific match? Even if that means maybe you don't pass the ball out from a goal kick when the other team is pressing you deep into your own end, because maybe you haven't worked out all the kinks yet. So you think, okay, maybe we could start doing that 6 months from now. But no, if it's in his DNA, I think he believes in doing it every single time. Um, and I was thinking about that a lot over the summer. Um, there's a quote here from Jose Rivero when he signs for the club that I thought, okay, I think he understands where he is. He said, being a coach at Orlando Pirates helped me a lot. I was running a project to build a whole team of young players. It was difficult, but I learned a lot. I won 5 titles, participated in the African Champions League, and reached the final stages of the championship more than once. I think here he means, he was in the run-in with Mamelodi Sundowns more than once. But here's the most important part of this quote. The first and last culture of the club. I think here he means like the main characteristic of the club, here he's talking about Al-Ahli, is to win all the championships you can participate in. I know that I'm at a big club. I want to win all the championships available in front of me. Again, that's great thing to hear. Now the question is, how do you go about that? Are you going to be stubborn and try to build things slowly? Or are you sometimes going to take the shortcut and the easy way out? The way that Al-Ahli have conducted their business prior to the Club World Cup makes me think sometimes it's going to be pragmatic. Uh, they brought in a lot of players. Now, what you have to understand is that there's an exceptional transfer window for this Club World Cup where a lot of clubs are going and loaning players just for a month or two and saying, hey, going to, for example, to Hamdi Fathi is a midfielder, an all-action combative midfielder that played for Al Ahly for 5 years. He left last summer to go to Al Wakra in Qatar, and now Al Ahly went back to him to the Qatari club and said, hey, can we just have him for a month or two just for the Club World Cup, and then we'll give him back to you. We'll pay his wages, maybe we'll give you a little bit of a symbolic fee as well, and the player usually wants to play as well, and that's how the clubs have gone about it. Now, if you're a coach with a long-term vision, maybe you don't think that's conducive, maybe you think, but then I'm going to start the Champions League and the league next year, and I was relying on a player that was just here for a month or two, and now he's gone. That's not smart. The flip side is, no, I need to win matches in this competition, because if I win matches in this competition, that's going to extend my budget because I'm going to get more prize money. That's going to give me also more time because people are going to be more patient with me because I've had good results in the Club World Cup. So again, all of these things have to be percolating in Jose Rivero's mind. But again, how Al Ahly have gone about their business prior to the Club World Cup, I think is very encouraging. If you're a win now kind of person, they brought in the Esperance midfielder Mohamed Amin Ben Ramdan, who I sort of compare him to a suspension system in a car, like he's that player in midfield where if you give him a bad pass, he can make it into a good pass. Like if you're in the car and you have a good suspension system and you drive over a pothole, like you don't even feel it because the suspension system absorbs it. That's what Ben Ramadan is kind of like, he's just always going to keep things smooth for you, always going to make the right pass, always going to recycle possession in a good way, be in the right position. And then he can help out with things like penalty kicks. He's a very good penalty kick taker. Trezeguet, if you've been watching the Egyptian national team, has been the player that steps up the most for them. Former Aston Villa winger, of course, he played at Al Ahly before as well. And to the point where I think some Egyptians prefer him sometimes to Amar Marmoush in the national team because whenever they need a goal, he steps up and he scores. So he can play as like sometimes as a wing back, he can play as a winger, sometimes he can play as a false nine. So to have Trezeguet come in with his experience, with his clutch goal scoring ability, his experience playing at the highest levels in the Premier League and in the AFCONs, I think is great for them as well. Hamdi Fathi, who I mentioned, can be that combative midfielder. Particularly, I think Akram Tawfiq is out for this tournament. I'm not 100% sure. So I think they needed maybe a little bit of depth in midfield as well. And then the flagship signing is Ahmed Said Zizou. Zizou is another starter for the Egyptian national team with Trezeguet. So the Egyptian national team has been starting Trezeguet, Zizou, Mohamed Salah, and Omar Marmoush, and they're a top 5 national team in Africa. And Al Ahly brought in two of those top 4, which are two of those top 4 attackers, which are very, very good players, obviously. And Zizou, his energy, his running is one of his most valuable assets as a winger or as a number 10 or even like as a number 8. That's really what I think he does best is he's very generous with his effort, with his spirit. He'll run all over the place, put in tackles, but then he also has the attacking quality, particularly with his set pieces, his penalty taking, and his crosses, where he can be very, very dangerous. So he also scores important goals. So he's been obviously a star for Zamalek for the last, 7, 8 years. And for him to sign with Al Ahly I think he ruined his legacy as he was, again, a star with Al Ahly's biggest arch rival, Zamalek. But still, he comes here at a time where perhaps, who knows, perhaps they have a chance to make history. Now, one of the reasons why I'm very optimistic with Al Ahly, they're playing against Inter Miami. Inter Miami, from what I understand, since Javier Mascherano took them over, have not been as successful as they were, when Messi initially arrived, and they just went on like this record-setting pace in terms of winning matches. So Inter Miami struggling a bit, obviously aging. I think the Americans, sometimes I listen to the previews from the American media and the European media. Everybody's picking. Uh, any club but Al Ahly, Inter Miami, Porto, Palmeiras, and it makes me laugh because, from what I understand as well, I don't want to do what they're doing to Al Ahly, just give uneducated takes. But when I see like Porto and Palmeiras, I see clubs just going by their recent results that haven't, finished in the top two of their respective leagues. Speaking about Porto, Palmeiras haven't won, I think, the Copa Libertadores since 2021. It seems like clubs that were successful over the last few years, but not necessarily over the last 1 or 2 years. To be fair, we could say that about Al Ahly as well. This year, they didn't have the success they had over the last 5 years. Um, but when I just look at the quality of players, I look at the quality of coaching, I look at the size of the clubs, and for me, maybe I'm biased. I see that and I say, man, Al Ahly are favorites to get out of this group. I'm not saying they're going to win the group, um, but when I see them, alongside maybe one of Palmeiras or Porto, depending on how the Europeans come, how seriously they take this tournament. Some, I guess, are going to take it seriously. Others might not so much. But I think Al Ahly have a very, very, very good chance to get out of this group. It's not like they're going up against a European mega club like Paris Saint-Germain, Real Madrid, or something. Porto and Palmeiras and Al Ahly and Inter Miami, I think they're all, maybe Inter Miami is a step lower, but the rest of them, I see them as all very evenly. I see them as even, pretty much. So I think people are going to be surprised, maybe, by Al Ahly, uh, which is crazy to say if you're an African, because that's the one team that you shouldn't be surprised by. But I think there's so little respect for African club football by the rest of the world, that I think they're going to surprise people. So I'm picking them to win. Maybe not tonight because they're playing Inter Miami at home. Maybe it's a draw. But then they'd probably. I think they're going to get 4 to 5 points and get out of this group with 4 to 5 points. No matter whether that's them winning tonight against Inter Miami, or against Palmeiras in a match that I'm going to be at, on June 19th, or against Porto, which I think is going to be June 22nd or June 23rd. I think Al Ahly will get 4 or 5 points and get out of the group stages. Don't underestimate that they're going to be playing some of their matches in New Jersey, which is the state that has the most Egyptians in terms of the American diaspora. So I think we're looking at, I think it's 30 to 40,000 Egyptians in that state. So they're going to have a lot of home support. And again, that's another thing that I think the Europeans and the Americans are going to be shocked by. If, for example, Inter Miami were playing this match in New Jersey against Al Ahly, there's a very good chance that Al Ahly would have maybe double the amount of supporters that Inter Miami would have even in New Jersey. Now, there might be more Messi fans, but actually people supporting Inter Miami, not so much. So anyways, just wanted to get this out before the match tonight. Then I'm going to we're going to be doing Esperance tomorrow. And then we're going to be doing Wydad. And then, or sorry, yeah, Esperance. Yeah, Wydad. And then, sorry, Esperance, Sundowns, and then Wydad, yeah. And then, so that way we'll have gone team by team. We're also going to be checking in after the match with reactions. So after every single match, at least for the next week or so, when I'm in Kenya, I don't know if I'm going to have the time to do that. But there will be a watch along when we're in Kenya for Mamelodi Sundowns versus Fluminense. So if you're interested in that, just keep an eye out on the channel, because I'm going to be posting a link where you can click the notify me button. That way you can watch the game alongside me and alongside other members of the Africa as a Country team. So anyways, leave it there for now. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Peace.